unless they're meditating on the formless.
They're seeing our waiting page, and we have Roger and Kendra there.
Oop, this light's blinking. Somebody, I think maybe the plug.
Yeah, the plug is between John and
Okay.
Ricardo.
Plug back in.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be careful not
Just
to
one
lean
thing
against
on it.
Okay. When you're ready, Babaji, turn on your microphone.
It's on.
Okay. All right, when you're ready, I'll turn them on.
Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmalishkalam Tachubram Jyoti Sam Jyoti Tad Yadatma Viddo Vidduhu, shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, pure, free of all taint, the essence of all which every being seeks, knowingly or unknowingly. There shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches, it is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Shravanayapi Buhubir Yo Na Labhyaha Shrinvato Pi Bahavo Yam Na Vidyuhu Ascharyo Gyata Kushulo Shalabdaha Ascharyo Vakta Kushulo Nushishtaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Some there are who have never heard of the great self within. Others, though they hear of it, fail to comprehend it. Fortunate is that one who hears of it. Wonderful is the one who speaks of it. But extremely blessed is that one who, having heard of it from the lips of an illumined preceptor, is able to realize it here and now, in this very life. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Satyena, Om Satyena Labhyastapassa Yesa Atma Samyagyanena Brahmacharyena Nityam Antaha Sharirehi Jyotirmayohi Shubraha Yam Pashanti Atayaha Kshina Doshaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self in all beings and all things, is realized by moderation, by knowledge, by veracity, and by austerity. All of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds it everywhere, existing in everything, even here, in this very body. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome everyone to our second class on the weekend in San Francisco. This is the SRV San Francisco ashram, and we stand for Sharada, Ramakrishna, and Vivekananda, those three great beings who lived in the 18 and 1900s in India, in Calcutta. The great master, they call him, being an exemplar of Divine Mother Kali, or the path to divine reality through Divine Mother. And he was accompanied in this life by Sri Sharada Devi, also affectionately known to us as the Holy Mother, who was the teacher of my teacher, and who lived on into the 1920s and into the 1900s, and made thousands of devotees, brought them aware of the work that the third of those beings was doing, Swami Vivekananda, when he arrived here on these shores in 1893 and went to the Parliament of Religions and made a big impression there, which is a matter of historical record now. He was bringing the darshana, or the way of pure seeing, clear seeing, they say, to the people of the West from the East, and presenting it not so much as a religion, as the Parliament of Religions was set up to do, but more as a path of universality, an acceptance of all religious paths, based in the metaphor, you might say, of the diamond with its many facets, all those facets being the different religions of the world. Or as the ancient Upanishads, or probably pre-Upanishadic, very ancient, back in the time of the Vedas, the Rig Veda particularly said, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Truth is one, and paths leading to it are many. It's probably one of the oldest statements we have on historical record of the mention of the path of universality, which is not eclecticism, and it's not just a sisterhood and brotherhood of religions. It's a reckoning that determines and declares that all these religions are true in their own setting, like a diamond's facets, and that each one has to be looked into separately. And they exist side by side as separate darshanas, clear ways of seeing. And the remarkable thing about what Swami Vivekananda brought to us was that Mother India had given birth to many of these. You've probably heard of many of them. One's called yoga, and one's called Vedanta, which we're teaching mainly here. Another is called Tantra. Another is called Buddhism, it came straight out of India. And Sankhya Yoga, the most ancient of them, Lord Kapula's listing of the 24 cosmic principles, which theretofore before him had not been reckoned in such a way, which influenced yoga and Vedanta and Buddhism later. And other systems, so some of them orthodox, some of them unorthodox. It didn't really matter to India, because being the mother of all religions, as she's called, she was fast to accept the ideas of other nations. When St. Thomas brought Christ's message to the southern shores of India in the 1st century BC, she absorbed them. And even today, and I've been there, they're a beautiful church with Hindu men and women walking into it worshiping Christ, yet they haven't let go of their adoration and devotion to the Hindu deities. Beautiful amalgam, or hybrid, you might say. Some hybrids work, some don't. In religion, if universality is at the base of it all, then the hybrid will work, it will grow, and it will bear fruit. And precisely why this contribution of Mother India is being worshipped everywhere now. It went to China, it went to Japan, it went to Thailand, it went to Ceylon, it went to Korea, it went to Tibet, as we know, yoga coming from Tibet and turning into the more popular religion today of Tibetan Buddhism. All of that based in Hindu yoga. But beyond Hinduism, which is rather a name for a conventional religion like other conventional religions have, Vedanta is the defining point of Indians' religions and philosophies. It's neither a religion or a philosophy, it's really a way of clear seeing and a path to walk upon. Based on this universality, you can take it and make a Christian a better Christian, a Hindu a better Hindu, a Jew a better Jew, and many of us are living proof of that as we got tired of our conventional religion and its insipid ways, its tired and outworn, outmoded, outdated ways, and we began to rejuvenate it by hearing this refreshing message of Vedanta, which is basically non-dualism. The word is called Advaita in Sanskrit. Non-duality is what Christ taught and what Buddha taught and others taught, but it's always been a sort of background, like a thread running through everything. Like Sri Krishna said, the thread running through the necklace of pearls that nobody sees. Everyone admires the pearls, but they don't think too much about what's holding it all together. So that non-dual strand is what's holding everything together. As we chanted last night at our puja, and some of you were in attendance, O Sharda, propitious goddess, killer of misery and souls resigned, savior of religion in every age, by saints and sages worshipped, O mother kind, give us love and wisdom thou, O grace incarnate, to thee we bow. Or if you want to hear it musically, it would sound something like that. Devim prasanam pranatarti hantrim Yogindra pujam jugadharma patrim Tam sharadam bhakti vijnana datrim Daya swarupam pranamami nityam That's one verse of some 7 or 8 that was written by Swami Abhedananda, who was one of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples, who, after Vivekananda came to the West, to Chicago, in 1893 for that World Religious Conference, that Abhedananda followed later and took over one of the centers in New York that Swamiji founded, which is still there today, along with its other sister center, and teaching the Vedanta to Westerners. Now, yesterday we went into the 3rd chapter of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, because this weekend is in honor of Shankara, whose birthday is this month, along with Lord Buddha's. So I'm giving a Zen retreat on Zen Buddhism up in Oregon in about a week, off of the Columbia River Gorge in the Wind River area, so to honor Lord Buddha's birth. The thrice blessed one, he was called, because he was born on a full moon, and he gained his nirvana, his enlightenment, on a full moon, and he also passed into samadhi on a full moon. And Shankara's birthday also today, not today, but this month. May is a very sacred month, having these 2 very non-dual souls born in it, one from the Buddhist fold, one from the Vedantic fold, one representing Advaita Vedanta and the other representing all strains of Buddhism. And then today being Mother's Day is also auspicious. So we have, as of yesterday, arrived at the 7th and 8th sloka of the 3rd chapter of the Upanishad, in which we showed this chart about Divine Mother. Here she is in this day and age, Sri Sharda Devi, shown in 2 different representations. And so we want to honor the Upanishads that Shankara commented on, the 108 Upanishads, which is one of the reasons why 108 is such a significant number in the Indian philosophy, is that there's 108 Upanishads and there's 108 beads on your mala and so forth. So these 108 Upanishads, Shankara in his 32 years of life. He lived 32 years. He was enlightened by the time he was in his teens, and teaching graybeards when he was in his 20s, and making commentaries on the greatest scriptures of the world throughout his late 20s and early 30s. So some of those commentaries were on these Upanishads. Upanishad. It's an interesting word in Sanskrit. It's like that upa, that guru you meet, which undoes the knot of ignorance. Upanishad. The teacher that undoes the knot of ignorance in you, so that you can live a divine life and a dharmic life, get on with the business that you're here, which is to manifest divinity in the form. There's no other reason to come to earth than to manifest divinity in the form. All other purposes take a back seat to that. How often we get distracted from that purpose by all these other sidetracks and forget our divine purpose and our divine heritage and our divine nature, which I was just chanting about, the Atman. Some have heard of the self, the Atman, some have never heard of it. Some hear of it and fail to comprehend it. So there's a whole cross-section of beings out there, many strata of living beings who, even though they may hear of it, they fail to go and realize it. And then, what to speak of realizing it, bring it full circle and manifest it in life, which is what we would really like to say, like to see. So, honoring Shankara, Lord Buddha, and Divine Mother of the Universe in this series of 2 classes this weekend, we move into the 3rd chapter of the Upanishad. Shvetashvatara, he was a very illumined rishi. Many of the rishis named their Upanishads after their family name, and Shvetashvatara was the sort of grandsire of that whole family line. All of them were truth seekers and truth knowers, and by the time they had studied the Vedas deep enough and meditated and imbibed wisdom and created a whole culture in Sanskrit based upon enlightenment as being the main purpose of life, with no sidetracks or distractions in the way, life just went on in a natural way. Ignorance was not there, evil was not there. The light of Brahman was evident to everyone. There was no gray areas. It was a golden age, they said, and it's lived thousands of years now, so that you can pick up a scripture like this, as short as it is, and find truth as clear in it as it was back in Sanskrit in the early days. Sanskrit having so many words that we don't have in English for spiritual principles. That's the thing. Some of those words have found their way into our culture, like guru and karma and maya, and so forth. Some of them we're sort of familiar with, but there are many, many words that speak of these very subtle principles back deep inside the consciousness of mankind that have to do with principles and secondary principles, you might say. That is, qualified non-dualism and non-dualism both exist side by side in the Upanishads. You could have a statement, say, if we want to put it in Christian terms, I and my Father are one. Well, that's specifically non-dual. But then you could have a statement, seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto you. That's qualified non-dual, because you're seeking something which you already are. So it can't be non-dual, you see. So the non-dual stance is very special, is very singular. It's something that you must, Vivekananda said, you must rise up to. You can't pull it down to this world. That's the tendency of most people, to try and bring God down into the object or into the subject or into the subject-object relationship or into the worlds or into their comfort zones. But God will not come there. You might have noticed comforts followed by discomfort, pleasures followed by pain. Virtue is afraid of vice. And those are marching on and on in cycles throughout time. So if you went to the Buddha and sat with him, he would immediately say, suffering is the nature of this universe, and pleasure is a kind of suffering. You must transcend those kinds of dualities. So yesterday we looked at transcending the dualities by triputis, right? Watch out for twos, but you should know that there are such things called threes, triputis. There's always a back door out of a duality, you see, that you can wiggle out. It gives you some wiggle room. And then you should also know that there are fives everywhere, 5 senses, 5 elements, 5 subtle senses in dream, 5 pranas, 5 types of prana or energy that flow, 5-fold mind. It's got all sorts of quintuplications going on, so the whole system is based on, according to the ancient Indians, a quintuplication process. It spills out from Om, the word, that Christ had that spot on, although John didn't understand it. It spills out from the word and then comes through the Trinity, and then to the Trinity the light shines and turns into all these worlds. So immediately you're at odds with the 7-day creation theory or the 4,320,000,000 year evolutionary theory. You're thinking more in terms of the great mind projecting everything and withdrawing it, just like you do every night in sleep. You wake, you dream, you go into deep sleep, and then you bring it all back in waking again. You're a little mini creator there, you see, a little mini preserver, a little mini destroyer. So you're a manifestation of these three. It's the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, we call it in Sanskrit. Brahma is the one who projects the universes in space and time. Vishnu preserves them. Shiva destroys them at the end. And destroy here doesn't mean annihilation. Nothing doesn't exist. You can't take something back to nothing. Neither can you get something out of nothing. That's why we don't believe in God creating a soul. How can you create a soul? A soul just is. You can't create a soul. Soul's not made of energy or matter or thought. A soul is pure consciousness. And they've known that from time out of mind, and pure consciousness exists at all times. It's not dependent on processes. It's not dependent on transformation. It's not dependent on time, space, and causality. It's an eternal principle. And it always is, always was, and always will be. And that's you. That's you. I am that. See? Tat tvamasi. That thou art. Buddha pointed at the moon when he was talking that non-dual truth, and they all looked at his finger. So people haven't got the idea yet that I and my Father are one. Or if they do, it's only Jesus. You see, you're a great soul like that will know that, but the rest of us can't. But then why did he say, be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven is perfect, if he didn't know that you too had that same soul inside of you? No difference. The only difference is in manifestation. Vivekananda said that at the Parliament of Religions. There is one soul, and it breaks apparently into many parts. Apparently it breaks, but it never actually separates itself out at all. It's indivisible. That's why I just chanted that. Hairan Mai Pari Koshi Virajan Brahmanishkalam. It's indivisible. Ever one, though appearing as many. So in order to know that, you're going to have to study that thread that runs through the pearls, that non-dual message that runs through all the scriptures. Not just the Hindu scriptures, the Indian scriptures, but also you'll find traces of it in the Bible and in the Quran and other great holy books of the world. You have to follow that carefully and define consciousness as being unborn and undying. Eternal is the word. We have one word in English at least that would state it. But words in Sanskrit that further define it would be a parinama. I'll show you a chart about that soon. Parinama means non-transformation. We're always seduced and deceived by appearances. It's rather easy to see when you look at our science and so forth, our Western science, that we're studying objects down to the minutest particle. And then when we see that there's nothing more to see, we can't give it up. See? When the Buddhists or the Vedantists saw objects down to the particle, they said, oh, I see, it's empty. I should renounce it. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, but I don't have any place to lay my head here. It's just vibrating particles. There's no substance here. It's empty. How is it empty? Well, it's not only empty of substance, but it's empty of the desire, of the ability to fulfill your desires. Haven't we found that out after so many lifetimes? That nothing here can fulfill us? That the only thing that can fill us is our very own self, God, Brahman, Atman, Allah, Almighty Father, Tathagatagarbha, Buddha nature, the only thing that will ever fulfill us. So Ram Prasad sings, turn and gaze at your original face. So you turn away from appearances and gaze inside at your original face. He sings this in a beautiful song. So that very unique and spiritual turn that the soul makes, see, will be a turn away from the ego and the ego-mind mechanism that's clutching at appearances. Clutches at appearances so much that pretty soon it clings to life and fears death, when the soul is birthless and deathless. What a predicament man has gotten himself into, that he fears the very same thing that he projected. See? Projects the worlds and space and time out of his mind, because all of these things, cloths and the pillows you're sitting on and the rug we sit on, are thoughts in your mind first, and later they turn into objects. Objects are just thought made concrete. They're thought solidified, intelligence solidified. You're sitting on your own intelligence. You're living in a world of your own devising. Unfortunately, some of us aren't very good projectors, you see. We come out of the womb, or into the womb first, and then come out of the womb with a skewed idea of what the world is like. Because in our past lifetime, we didn't clarify everything before we died. You have to clarify everything while you're still breathing. Somebody wrote me last week, how do I make my dream state lucid? See, everyone's talking about lucid dreaming nowadays, you see. I said, by making your waking state lucid, how else? You have to live a divine life first before your dreams follow. Because if you're living a nightmarish life, then you're having nightmarish dreams, right? So it's good for the goose, must be good for the gander. So render your waking state lucid. Master the waking state. Sit. Stop. You told me that yesterday. See, sitting, talking with one of my young students. So just want to stop and make everything turn off. Slow everything down so I can see how my mind is projecting everything. And when you see how the mind's projecting everything, you're not going to blame God for all of this anymore. And you're not going to conjure up a devil to blame things on. You're going to see that it all came out of you, including God and devil, came out of your own thought process. And then you can see the great self beyond forms. You see, beyond Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is the great mother, and beyond her is the Nirguna Brahman. And we looked at that yesterday in terms of verse 7. We saw the distinction that they saw between the Supreme Brahman and the personal God. They put it so nicely for us. The original distinction they saw was the isolation of soul from matter. If you want to put it probably in most easy to understand yeoman terms, what Buddha was really doing when he was sitting under the bo tree for 49 days trying to free himself from his rebirths with his ancestors, what he was really doing was separating the soul from nature. Because the soul and nature have a relationship. In other words, God with form, Saguna Brahman, is all appearance, it's all an overlay. Brahman can't be brought into a form. It's always formless. And that's how it stays free and clear of everything, you see. It's formless essence. Pure consciousness, we just said. And you have to raise yourself up, rather in, to see that. You see, you'll have to be a hailstone that falls in an ocean, gives up its form willingly, or a salt doll that walks in the ocean to try and measure it, you see, but never comes back again. Nobody can measure that ocean. But just short of the shores of that boundless ocean of consciousness is the ocean of Ananda, you see, the ocean of God with form, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Or they say Om, the great word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. That's three things. Nobody thinks about that. It's, oh yeah, the Word. See? But it was it was, and then it was with God, and then it was God, all three. That's 3 stages of the word that's happening here. So you study a Triputty again. See, you're not satisfied just to know there's some vibrating principle out there that you haven't connected yet to your quantum physics, to know that everything's vibrating, not only on this world, but in the subtle realm, and in the realm of the Trinity too, everything's a vibration. It's just the vibration gets so fine there that it turns into light. No different here really than there, light or sound. So these principles become extremely subtle, and you have to develop subtle senses to inspect them, you see. Sri Ramakrishna put it, love eyes, love ears, love tongue, you see. And if you can develop those instead of these plain senses here that are always grasping selfishly after objects and trying to get lands and money and things that are unreal and empty, so you give that up and you develop these subtle senses, and you sit like he did, happy like a child. And taking on and giving up a body is no different than a child outgrowing old sets of clothes and taking on new clothes, as Krishna says in the Gita. So they made that discriminating distinction between nature and soul. Soul is not nature. Divorce her. See, you have an unholy relationship with her, divorce her. That is, learn how to see your formless essence again. Give nature up, give form up. Don't reincarnate anymore. Don't ponder nature all the time. Don't get attracted to the beauty of a sunrise and an ocean, and think about the ocean of consciousness within you. And you're not going to surf it or fish it or mine it for hydroelectric power. It's not that kind of ocean, you see. It's an ocean of bliss inside of you, which renders all of this blissful once you see it. Seek thee first the kingdom of heaven. Grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but take unto yourself what is the Lord's. So what belongs to the Lord is this boundless ocean of consciousness out of which all of this spilled in vibrational form. From very, very fine vibration to subtle vibration to gross vibration. Guess what? You're in the realm of gross vibration right about now, you see, where things are solid, you see, solidity. Right there. Objects. Ether, air, fire, water, and earth. See, that's way below the cosmic mind, down in the gross form where the earth is the 5 elements. And guess what they connect to? Odor, flavor, visibility, tangibility, and audibility. As we were saying yesterday. Earth connects to smell. So if you want to know how the earth was created, so-called, meditate on your nose in the sense of smell. If you want to know how water was created, meditate on your tongue. Yogis do that all the time. They meditate on different parts of the tongue. If you want to know how fire is created, meditate on your eyes. Sight. What gives sight? And air with feeling, and ether with hearing. Hearing is the subtlest sense in my tradition. Can't be anything subtler than that. So those 5 connections, you put together the 2 quintuplications, right? And then across the board here you see the gross senses, excretion, procreation, moving, acting, and speaking, right? They go together with smelling, tasting, seeing, feeling, and touching too. So you've got 20 principles right away that most beings are leaving unconnected. They're just random out there. Oh, now I'm eating, now I'm watching TV, now I'm looking at a sunset, without any idea of how these connect inside. In other words, where their origin is. The tantric adept, the Vedic rishi, the Hindu yogi, they were all looking into origins from their very get-go. Where did these things begin? And when they studied the beginnings of things, they found out there was no beginning. And all of a sudden they solved the puzzle. of Maya. That beginnings, middles, and endings are apparent only. Time is apparent only. Space is apparent only. Is there any time for you in a coma? Is there any time for you in deep sleep? Is there any time for you in samadhi? If you've had samadhi yet? No, time goes away. It's a construct of the mind. And space is too, all these worlds. They go away for you in deep sleep tonight. They might as well not exist because you went formless. You should have just hung a sign, you see, on your ego and said, gone to lunch, you see. I've gone formless. Doctor's not in. See. And I don't know when I'm coming back, you see, because there's no time. And I don't know where I went because there's no space where I'm going. Vivekananda said it nicely. He said, where is the time which the soul will come when all of time is in his soul? Where is the space to which he will go when all of space is in his soul? No, we're not thinking about things being internal, kingdoms of heaven within. We're thinking about everything being outside. So Western man particularly is stuck, you see, in that doesn't understand formless reality. If you talk to him about formless reality, he wants to hang something on it. Wants to find somewhere to hang his hat on it, you see. Oh, it transforms, right? No, it doesn't transform. It evolves? No, it doesn't evolve. Don't go there, see. It had a beginning, an origin? No, it has no beginnings or endings. You have to knock them down every time, you see. Like my Swami did for me. I learned all of this from Hindu Swamis. And I was born as a Westerner in this lifetime for some unknown reason. As all my samskaras are Eastern. So this tendency to turn God into an object, see, it's been with us all along. It's been the creature of our fancy. And unless there's an object, we're not happy. Yet there's no happiness in objects. Go figure. Why? Because objects are empty. Not only empty of substance, because quantum physics has at least shown you that, but empty of the desire to fulfill you. You can feast on them forever, and you're just like having cotton candy for dinner. See? No substance, no sustenance in it. Yet we keep coming back and again to do the same thing over and over again in cycles. Well, Buddha said enough of that, you see. I don't want to be born again with my ancestors. They're a mess. Hating each other, loving each other, giving each other lands, taking it away, going to war. Gandhi said, the world is tired of war. It's the child of hatred. So if one person learns to love in the right way, then millions will follow. And that's what a great avatar shows you, how to love. Buddha was 550 years before Christ. He's a candidate to the throne of love, no doubt. Christ came along 550 years later and showed that same love and compassion. After that, another several hundred years, the father of yoga was born. After that, Shankara, whom we're celebrating in the Upanishads today, was born. After that, another 500 or 600 years, Chaitanya was born. Finally down to Ramakrishna. See? So India, if you just take India alone, is sending out these avatars, they're called. There's another word that's worked its way into our English language, you see, avatar. But I don't mean it in the Hollywood sense. Whereas again, war and machines and domination over races, that's Maya. It's not avatar. The avatar is coming to try and get us up and out of Maya. You are never in Maya. Maya is in you, so be done with it, is how Swami Vivekananda put it. You're never in Maya. But you're just not on vigil anymore, you see. Like in deep sleep, you just give up. You may be formless in deep sleep, but you're also as thick as a brick. As dumb as a stone. That's the difference between deep sleep and samadhi, because you go into samadhi and you'll come out refreshed, not just with physical reflection, you'll come out having seen the light of Brahman. In deep sleep, the curtain of nescience, you see, right there, that flows off of it, is keeping you from seeing your true nature. Curtain of nescience, nice term. Or cloud of unknowing, if you ask the Buddhists. Cloud of unknowing. Some primal ignorance back there that's keeping me from seeing my true nature. Not only from day to day and night to night, sleep to sleep and decade to decade, but from birth to death and death to birth. This thirst for life, forever quench. It drags from birth to death and death to birth the soul. They conquer all who conquer self. So give up the worlds. They're not worth conquering. They're empty. Conquer yourself. Because all the worlds came out of that self. Through the word. So if we see the great self could be correlated with nirguna Brahman. We studied the three gunas yesterday, if you remember, right? The three gunas of Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. The power of obscuration, the power of distortion, and the power of revelation. So those are the three gunas, particular to the Vedanta teaching, as we said. But nirguna means like nirvana or nirvikalpa or any other nir word in Sanskrit means extinction. Just like Buddha divorcing from nature. I will make nature extinct. And I'll get a divorce from form. And I'll sit in my non-dual nature. And then I can come back and engage with nature because nature, I know that nature came out of me. Before that, I thought nature was a separate reality from me. I thought heaven was a separate place somewhere I was going, and hell was some place underground. And God was a bearded fellow sitting up there, see. And devil had a pitchfork and he was on my trail. See, I was living in all sorts of superstitions that Vedanta just eradicates. I first went to my teacher, and the first thing he said to me, he actually yelled it at me, is, "If you believe in original sin, get out of this place." That's the kind of man he was. I said, "Swami, I don't. That's why I'm here. I'm searching, for higher answers." So he smiled and said, "Come in." So original sin and seven-day creation theory, fine if you're taking them symbolically, but taken literally, as some people are crazy enough to do, just isn't working. See? And then age after age, that is century after century, these mollusks, you see, these barnacles collect on the hull of your sailing ship, which is your religion, and just slows it dead in the water. Can't even get out of port anymore. And then religion fails people. So Vivekananda came back and said, "I want to give religion a capital R again." It's lost its case. In more ways than one, you see. It's losing its case. The Western peoples too, though they have a hard time accepting formless reality, they're not accepting wooden nickels anymore. The thin, sour gruel that fundamentalist religion's pushing at them for a diet. They're not accepting it anymore. They're looking to India for answers, and to Tibet, who has practiced Indian religion for 1400 years, and to Zen Buddhism in Japan, and Dzogchen in China, and so forth. They're looking there. The wisdom traditions, they're looking. You see, because faith without wisdom becomes sentimental and superstitious. And if you go to the wisdom traditions and don't bring your faith along, that becomes dry and intellectual. So you have to blend it. Therefore, give us love and wisdom, thou, O grace incarnate, to thee we bow, right? We want both love and wisdom together. Why? Because love may be the essence of everything, and everyone's going to agree about that, but you can't love rightly if you haven't gotten rid of your ignorance. You have to get rid of your ignorance first before love is really love. And the only thing to get rid of ignorance is knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna said, one thorn gets in your flesh, take another thorn from the same bush. See? Remove the first one, and then what do you do with the two thorns? You toss them. Once you get rid of ignorance, knowledge is of no great merit anymore, except for giving to others. See? Krishna says so in the Gita, and I said it yesterday. You must know, Arjuna, that the end of knowledge is truth. There is an end to knowledge, and it's in truth. So you'll reach that transcendent position, which is called non-duality, or Advaita, or Satori, or beatific vision, or Kaivalya, or Mukti, or Moksha, or Nirvana, or Nirvikalpa. Oh, they have so many words for it in these different traditions. How can so many very fine souls be wrong? Okay. If just one person came along, like Christ, and told you, you could crucify him, or deny him, betray him even if you were his students, you could betray him. See? But if so many come, one after the other, pouring out of the cosmic mind to show you the way, see, because in India, the avatar is not a savior. He's an exemplar. He didn't come to pay for the sins. He came to show you the way out of sin. And so in West, we get that skewed, you see. We should be looking at that. There's the way, there's the path, there's the light, as Christ said. Oh, I better follow it. Instead, we're saying, oh, please save me. I'm so poor and miserable. And he goes, oy, oy, oy. Oy vey. Because he was a Jew, right? So he has to come after you. So Sri Ramakrishna said that about the people of this time. He said, my eyes have become red, blowing on the coals, the waning coals of your spiritual fire. You see? Won't you do a little? I gathered the wood, I struck the flame, I put the food on to cook, I placed it on the table. Can't you eat? Do I have to feed you, spoon feed you, you see? So if you have a great light like that, you go towards it. You accept it as your ideal. All ideals are coming out of God with form. So Nirguna Brahman, you can't pray to it. You can't have love for it. You can't have faith in it. Because when you merge with it, you're it. See, there's no lover and beloved there. There's no prayer and prayee there. There's no triputi there. There's no duality there. There's no quintuplication there. It itself is the thing. In Zen they say, Zazen, I'm going to sit here. Sesshin, I'm going to extend my hours of sitting, you see. And I'll get enlightenment. And the Roshi says, I'm going to give you a koan, you see. Zazen is enlightenment. Sitting is enlightenment. The minute you come to sit, you're enlightened. That's the way they think of it in Zen. Now how's that for a mental asana? The Westerners so caught up with physical asanas nowadays. Completely taking yoga in the wrong way, see? As if twisting your body into pretzel shapes is going to get you enlightenment. You need one position, this. And you need to sit here for a while and let the mind wind itself out and things to stop. See? Everything to slow down and stop. And then you'll catch a glimpse, a beatific vision, see, of your true nature. That's all you need to do, is to stop. Maybe if you can't stop the mind quick enough, then practice the breathing exercise, you see. In breath, held breath, out breath, in breath, held breath, out breath. Until the heart rate stops and the mind stops thinking. Breath, heart, and mind have a connection. Duh, you see. We didn't have to wait for our science to tell us that. The yogis knew that for thousands of years. They knew that the way most people would get into the peace that passes all understanding would be through the breathing process. But they also said, there are beings that come out of the highest who do not need to practice asana. They do not need to practice breathing exercises. They inhabit the body with a pure mind from the very get-go. And then we look at them and say, that's not fair. How come they have a pure mind and I don't? Because the avatar is an exemplar, and they took the example and they sought the truth, and the truth set them free. And the rest didn't. The rest were waiting around for grace, or for the next incarnation of Christ, when he's probably already incarnated at least 4 or 5 times by now. You think he's going to come back in the same way, looking the same, saying the same thing. It's a different time, different people. If you look at all the great beings, you'll see how they adjusted their message for the age. The non-dual truth didn't change and all that, but the outer message, the package they had to present, changed. I mean, if you have fishermen for disciples, you can't teach them Advaita Vedanta from India, you see. Shankara could do that. His birthday is this month. He had some 18, 22 disciples, and many of them were jnanis. They were very, very astute. They'd have lifetimes studying the ancient wisdom. They weren't sitting along rivers with fishes and nets and loaves and so forth. Not knowing anything about the Word. Not meditating in the Garden of Gethsemane until he finally got them to do that. No, they had been meditating for lifetimes. It was a path in India. Te dhyan yoga nugata pasyan devatma shaktim svagunair nagudim yaha karnani nikilani tani kalatma yuktanya adidishtat yekaha. The ancient seers of India saw the Devatma Shaktim, the divine being in everything and everywhere, which, though veiled in the beginning by its own modes of nature, nevertheless was one and indivisible, and which had been undetected earlier due to the limitation of their own intellects. So they got into their minds and they took away those limitations, and then they saw the Devatma Shaktim. Beautiful word, Shakti, divine power, Deva, God. The divine power of God in everything. They saw it everywhere. But previously they hadn't seen it because their intellect was limited. They were thinking inside the box, you see. The veils that were still down. The curtain of nescience was still running through their consciousness. Can't see anything that way. It's a cloudy, foggy day. See. Bring out the sun. See. So, Nirguna Brahman is that sun, the eternal sun. And Saguna Brahman, you see right here, is everything that happens below that realm. If you looked at this nature of Saguna Brahman, what would you see? You would see that my iPad just went crazy. Might as well start with a quote. The Jnani, that's the wisdom knower, through his discrimination realizes that the ego and the universe are both illusions and perceives Brahman in his own consciousness. So, path of knowledge, right? How about the path of love? Down here, you see, the Bhakta is the Jnani, and then there's the Bhakta. So the Bhakta feels that God is one entity and the world is another. Therefore, God reveals himself to him as a person. Now, the advantage of the Vedanta is that we're given both. See? Somebody sees God with form, another person sees it without form. But you come to the Vedanta and said, Ramakrishna tells you God is with form, God is beyond form. And guess what? God is beyond both form and formlessness too. That's the Triputi, you see. You're not going to get stuck in just the concept that God is form and that's it, or that God is formless and now I've reached the end. You have to realize that God is both with form and beyond both form and form both, you see. That's true transcendence, you see. It's unlimited. The limitations of my intellect didn't let me see that, but when I got unlimited, I began to see that, how boundless and expansive the ocean of consciousness is. That's why it's free of attributes, nir, guna. It doesn't have any attributes, doesn't have any coverings, doesn't have any forms or names. Therefore, it doesn't have any problems, no issues, see? No concepts, no knowledge even. It's bereft of everything. It's free. It's Turyatita. It's beyond Turiya. Turiya is the state of formlessness. But it is invested with this formless dynamism. You see, Divine Mother herself, who can, with her veil of nescience and with her pure intelligence, is flowing there as a vibrational force. She's the purveyor of the word Om. You see, there's the Om sign, right? Through this membrane, right here, which exists between this chakra and this chakra, third eye and head, pass souls out of her through the word. And the word has an aperture, and they find that aperture and they are going to head for embodiment. See, here, process of embodiment. Some do it consciously, but most do it unconsciously. Most are dragged from birth to death and death to birth without knowing. And others say, it's time to go down to the world and do that work which Mother has called me to do. And I'm going to take her with me. I'm going to take remembrance of her with me, because pratyabhigya, recognition and remembrance, are half the battle. If I forget, that's it. Curtain of nescience is down. It's very rarely that a soul is going to remember its true nature once the curtain of nescience has fallen, once it's been born in the womb and been indoctrinated by fundamentalist religion and been raised out of the Dharma by worldly parents and has been subjected to the conventions of society. How are you going to get free of that mess? Ever thought of that? To what degree that you're free, you have to look and say, thank you, Mother, I don't know how I did it, but I got free. I look at what I was up against, I don't see how I did it. Must be something called grace in the quotient, you see. So all of those impasses, see, of the most subtle of them all is that Rudra Granthi, that knot of consciousness that exists between form and formlessness. And she passes through it at will. Mother Mary, Mother Sharda, Sita, Radha, Uma, Parvati, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Kali, Durga, the mother of many, many forms, passes through that. And protects her precious spiritual children. See? That's why they sing nowadays to Mother. Jaya Jaya Janani Jaya Shri Sharanamani Karuna Rupini Ma Adya Shakti Param Prakriti Asharana Gati Tumi Ma, and so forth and so on. She's the Adya Shakti, the original mother. Adya means original, firstborn, see, primeval, the archetypical one. There's one of her, and then she manifests through all these goddesses and divine beings. You see. We know about her because Ramakrishna brought her. See. She was my teacher's teacher, Sharda. So I went to him because I had a strong desire and longing to realize God as Mother. Shakta, it's called, Shaktism. We're not talking about a feminine form so much as we're talking about a feminine principle. See? She's not an earth goddess or a four-armed being somewhere. See? She's formless reality, but she's the energy of Brahman. That flowing energy that makes you feel balanced, that makes you feel inspired. You see? It's like the up-breath. It's inspiration, right? If you can get a hold of that prana that makes the breath go up, then you can make your thoughts go up. So they seize on that prana, so they keep it going past the breath. And then they get the transmission of wisdom from their teacher, who's maybe a follower of Shakti. What else is there for us to look at? Gunas in abeyance, we already said that. It's nirguna, so when everything comes into form out of her, you see, and goes through the formless Om and spills down into the Trinity, and then the Trinity spills down into the cosmic mind, collective mind, and individual mind. And that all spills down into the world through the quintuplication process. The gunas are in operation. But that all happens without this ever changing in the slightest. Higher than the personal Brahman is the infinite supreme Brahman, who is concealed in all beings according to their bodies, and who, though remaining single, note that, though remaining single, envelops the whole universe. Knowing that one becomes immortal. So all that change, all that apparent change, and that apparent transmutation, and that apparent transformation, that is all non-actual. See, in English you try and look for words to explain the formless. Probably in any language you do, but in Sanskrit they had some very good pointers, pointing at the moon, you see. They had some very good pointers to lead you toward the formless that we're lacking here, that we don't have a non-dual philosophy in the West, bereft of it. We have to go to the wisdom traditions for it, of the East. Sun rises in the East, but it sets in the West, doesn't it? So if that wisdom that came to us, most recently through Vivekananda at the Parliament of Religions, is beginning to set here in the West, then we have to be there for that sunset. And realize and imbibe that truth. So you make it a part of our lives, express it, manifest it. And then we'll have done credit to a great being who sacrificed so much, who came out of the highest reality. Ramakrishna called him a Nityasiddha, an eternally perfect soul. So he came out of the highest reality through Mother, which he used to say, she's my especial thing. You don't understand Mother yet, you haven't caught my fire. She's the especial thing in my life. And he was a monk, sannyasin. So he came into the body, and so we will do him a great credit and great justice and give him great gratitude if we can imbibe those teachings he brought to us, which I'm speaking to you right now. This is all Vedic wisdom, mixed in with some Tantra, some Yoga, some Buddhism, even some Christianity. Even Islam is there, you see. Ooh, we're afraid now, you see. There's no such thing as a foreign religion. You should X that from your vocabulary. All religion is indigenous to your soul. You can learn so much. Our founder was a Sufi sheikh, Lexikson. He was the head of the Jarahi order of dervishes here in the West. An honor bestowed upon him by Sheikh Musafir Effendi. So he was not only a Vedantist and a practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism, but he was also a Sufi sheikh. Nur al-Jarahi, call him Sheikh Nur al-Jarahi. And how much light he shone on Sufism and Islam for us. See, in a time when the tendency is to turn them into infidels like Christianity did, you see. The Pope would put on armor and go to war against the infidels. What's a Pope doing on the battlefield? Is it any wonder that Gandhi said the world is tired of religion or tired of war when even religion is engaging in it? That's crazy behavior. Just insane. All based on superstition. In the ego that wants to dominate over others, you see. Domination is one of the 8 occult powers. Making oneself higher than another is another. Grander than another is another one of the occult powers. Trying to levitate is another occult power. These are crow droppings by the side of the road. Who said that? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And thousands of years before him, Sri Krishna, his namesake, said, if you have even one of the occult powers, you'll never reach enlightenment. If you hold even one of the occult powers, you'll never gain illumination. So renounce them. But there are teachers about now who are saying, trying to endear you to the occult powers. as if that's what the yogi seeks. Those powers come to the yogi unasked, and he never uses them. He finds a way to file them away somewhere, out of sight, out of mind. If he has to walk on water once in a while, it's his business. See? He can do it. But he makes sure the message is right. So, in terms of this seventh sloka, in terms of this chart, we are making the very necessary and healthy subdivision between Nirguna and Saguna Brahman. The sloka says, higher than the personal Brahman is the impersonal Brahman that is concealed. So here's Brahman walking around on two legs, mankind. Why are you worshipping images in temples? Vivekananda said. You should be worshipping a living God, man walking around on two legs. That's the sole object of my devotion. My man, the good, my man, the evil. They're both subjects of my devotion. So, devoting oneself to the worship of God and mankind is his ideal. This quote here is the same one that's in the Upanishad that we're just studying. So those of you who do not have texts, that is Sloka 7 of chapter 3 that we're just looking at and taking apart. And we should probably move on. Let's look at Sloka 8. I have realized this great being who shines effulgent like the sun beyond all darkness. One passes beyond death only upon realizing that there is no other way to escape from the circles of birth and death. You want out of all inhabitation of form, like Buddha did under the bo tree and Christ did in the wilderness and so forth, then you're going to have to put that ego to rest, calm that mind, and use that refined intellect like a goad and pierce through the appearances of things and man your true self. It's like a sailing vessel that's without a captain, you see. And you have to reman it, sail it into the great beyond. So that brings up this other chart, also pictured with Holy Mother in it, the process of embodiment. She has some tips for us here. She says, do you know what God with form is like? That is, her husband, her divine husband said, God with form is like bubbles rising on an expanse of water. Various divine forms are seen to rise out of the great ocean of consciousness. The incarnation of God is one of these forms, and the primal Shakti sports through that incarnation. So, a very nice description in one sentence or two of this chart. Divine incarnation is a wave that comes out of the ocean of Brahman through, and Shakti will sport through him. See, that pretty much summates that chart right there. Now, she says about embodiment, after the birth in a human body, some attain salvation in this life, whereas others take inferior births to reap results of their karmas. Not all can be free from desire. The creation is going on because all cannot be free of desire. Desire is the seed that's keeping the worlds running. The creation is going on because all cannot be free of desire. But that is indeed the last birth in which one gets rid of desires completely. One will not have to come again. So, unlike some of the more modern women teachers, Holy Mother is not trying to make us happy with the world. She's trying to show us how much misery is here. The first noble truth of Buddhism is all there is suffering. And if you don't understand that first precept, you can't be a Buddhist. I know people running around calling themselves Buddhists who are still trying to help the world. You can't help the world. The world is going to stay the same. It is dual by nature. It has suffering in it. It came out of an imperfect mind as a thought projection. That you're trying to help the world is a good thing, if you're not attached to the result. You don't do good acts, random acts of kindness. You do very specific acts of kindness. Random acts of kindness, I don't agree with the bumper sticker. These acts of kindness have to be very well discriminated, you see, and placed in the right setting with the right person at the right time. Those three things are key. Right person, right intention, right time. And then you'll see some positive transformation. And even when you see a transformation, that's non-actual. That person was already the Atman. You're just helping him to see it. The soul can't be created, we said. It's all there in everyone. To the same degree it's there. Quantity and quality, the same souls in everyone. It's just the degree of realization of that soul that's different. Same soul, same quality, same quantity. The degree of realization varies. That's all. So pulling away veils from people's eyes is the work. See, then they will help themselves. And as they help themselves, they won't make it a better world. They'll leave the world. Because the world's unreal. This is what I'm saying, unless you have some sort of idea of the formless reality, these kinds of truths, these axioms aren't going to make sense to you. See, to have some sort of taste of what Buddha saw beyond form. Some vision of the Mother who brings you up and out of the worlds of name and form to a transcendent state. Some feeling of the nobility of being the Atman, of being Buddha nature. Of having true love. So she's giving us some good clues here, and that's a question that's asked quite often, and she answers there. Why is the creation going on? Because of desire. She pretty much nails it. And all the religions are pretty much in unanimous assent about that. It's desire that's the enemy. Krishna says in the Gita that desire is at the root of everything. It's this smoke that covers the fire. See? The embryo that covers the fetus. See? It's there veiling everything. So do away with it with the fire of knowledge. Nahi gyanenam sadrishyam pavitramiha vidyate. There's only one purifier in this world. It's the greatest of all, and that's called knowledge. Get a hold of that, use it, get rid of ignorance, and then be content and free. Live in a content and free state from then on. Whether the world exists or not, whether it's real or not, whether you can help it or not, really won't matter then. Because there is no world, there's only Brahman. That's another way of putting what I just said. Maybe more acceptable to you. You can't help the world because it's not a world. It's Brahman. And Brahman doesn't need your help, thank you very much. You need your help. She says on the other side, many a time a man takes birth and dies again and again in a certain family due to his karma. I could stop at any sentence and start talking, you see, because karma, reincarnation, is going on in families, like pods of whales or packs of wolves, you see. Souls are born to familiar circumstances. I used to have to field questions like, well, why did God create crack babies, you see? God doesn't create number one, you see. He's not a creator. You created all this. He's staying away from it, you see. She thought she had it, deception down. She saw the human race get loose. She said, God, they taught her something about delusion. Out there in the field. Like children playing, what mess they're going to get into, you see. Craziness they're going to perpetrate. So born again into families, and families and families and families. It's your ancestors. It was what Buddha was trying to do when he sat under the Bo tree. How can I disassociate myself with my ancestors? Swami Vivekananda said, God saved a lot of them, but save me from them. God saved them all, but save me from them. He was a perfectly free soul. He didn't want to get sucked into that mess you're calling a world. He was sitting like a wooden statue for 700 years before he came here in perfect meditation, in absolute bliss. Why would you want to come out of that? To enjoy a little food that turns into excreta later? That turns into cancer after that? See? Paltry things of the world. You're nobler than that. So this process of being born again and again with your ancestors, I want to get out of that. Ramakrishna said it a little bit more directly. The world is a great pit. Your ancestors are vipers inside. Even good ancestors are vipers. Because what do they want you to do? Here, have this land. Here, take care of me when I'm old. Here, take this money. There's strings attached to it, but take it. See? So good moral people, they're a danger to you until they've learned the Dharma. Beyond morality and ethics is Dharma. Morality and ethics says, thou shalt not kill. But Dharma says, thou cannot kill. It's not possible to kill anything because it was never born. So immediately you're seeing the difference between the Dharmic precepts and these moral rules that they've been feeding you. You never learned that those people on the other side of the battlefield are birthless and deathless. You were thinking about, should I kill them or should I not? Is it right to do it or is it wrong? So you were caught in this duality all the time, and that's war. It's more war in here than it is out there. Because the more of those evil beings you can dispatch, the more opportunity they might have to come back as illumined souls, you see. Let's just mow them down. That's what Krishna says on the battlefield to Arjuna. He said, that's the Adharmic army over there. So what if your grandfather and a couple of your cousins are in that army? Kill them. They're birthless and deathless. You're just dispatching their bodies. And they're not the body, by the way. At least they've known that in India for a long time. We haven't even learned that yet. Cling to our bodies as if it were something real. See? Let it go. Let it go in meditation first. Zazen, and the Zen Roshis tell you that's dying on your cushion. They said, have you experienced death on your cushion yet? They ask you that, you see. Call you in for a session, you see. Have you experienced the death of your ego yet in meditation? They want to know that first, you see. Because then you're a candidate for freedom. Then the body is just a station you visit and evacuate. And fear of death is quickly going away every time you do. And attachment to the body is going with it. And it's freedom. It's at least the prelude to freedom, you see. So, one sentence out of her mouth in this day and age. You could just go on and on and on about it, spouting relative and absolute truths both, you see. That's what she calls up in us. She goes on, but one should not blame God for this. Does not blame God for being born again and again in the same family. God didn't have anything to do with it. So she's giving you a big clue here, that God does not have anything to do with your life. Not this God, the Nirguna God. You can't bring him into life. You can't blame him for anything. He's not responsible for you. You can't pray to him either. You're going to have to come down here to submit your prayers to the personal God. And if he's only here every 500 years, it's going to be a pretty hard time you're going to have to try and get your prayers answered. See? You're going to have to find him inside of you. Where else would he be? Are the kingdoms of heaven outside of you? Seek the kingdoms of heaven outside of you? Did he say that? Or did he say they're within you? How do you get to them? Through subtle nerves. You have gross nerves, hundreds and thousands of them. You take them out and tie them together, they'll stretch from here to New York and back, they say. How many nerves you have in your gross body. But you're not accounting for your subtle body yet. How many nerves are in that? Subtle body is the mind, basically. And it's got nerve endings that go everywhere to these worlds inside. That's how Christ found the kingdoms of heaven inside, and sat there still like this under the tree, stunned. Birds pecked grains out of his hair. Snakes slithered across his lap. He didn't move. He was stunned. In India they call that Jada Samadhi. They'd known about it for thousands of years. What happened to Christ when he sat there? First of all, he probably saw the kingdoms of heaven within, and he abandoned his body, and he followed these with his prana, you see, under control. He followed him through all these inner network of nerves to this big, huge cosmic body. And that's where the kingdoms of heaven are lying. See? First you'll find the ancestors, then you'll find the angels and celestials. Go deeper, you'll find the gods and goddesses. Go deeper than that, you'll find the great wisdom knowers, the rishis, the seers, the saints. Go deeper than that, you'll find the Trinity. And when you find the Trinity, they're going like this, and they have a big Om sign painted on the hand, and it says, if you go beyond me, you're going formless, brother. Have no more hope for the worlds evermore if you go beyond this. The worlds don't exist where you're headed. The worlds are just my dream, Lord Brahma would tell you. See? They're just my dream. This great cosmic being dreaming you. See? You're a dream of some greater being. Don't you dream other beings tonight? Don't you have a whole host of servants and people that you're lording over in your dream? And do you have any guilty conscience for destroying them after your dream's over? Lord Brahma, this is all the cosmic dream. And Vishnu will sustain it. And you better know Shiva, because he's going to come and destroy the whole thing, dissolve it back into its source again. Where is the source? Nowhere? Nihilism? Annihilism? Death? Emptiness? No, it's back into the Word. That's what was in the beginning. But Christ didn't want his religion based on origins, Genesis. He wanted it based on I and my Father are one. That's a true religion. In the beginning was the world. Word means origins. So great, yeah, come to know the Word. But it was only with God when you found it. It wasn't God yet. You're going to have to go through the Word to find the Lord. How did he say it? You get to the Father through the Son. He happens to have three of them here. See? Three good sons. Brahma, Lord Brahma, will make it a slow process, and Vishnu will make it an easy process. But if you meet with Shiva, he'll say, let's get this over with now, like a good dentist, usually. It's no wonder population is on the side of Vishnu in India, you see, and Shiva, they're going, I don't know if I want to worship him, or her, Kali, you see. He's going to try and talk me out of this dream I'm having. I like my dream, thank you. Leave it alone. So don't blame God for your rebirth, she says. Everyone reaps the effects of their own action. And though one may have to take on a new body, one does not necessarily lose spiritual consciousness if one has one's merit credits from previous births. Though you bring it forward. Memory. There's a word for memory in our tradition that's much deeper than, getting out a bunch of photographs of your dead parents, you see, and having a sentimental trip. See? And to make a sentimental journey. See? Memory in India means memory of your past births. And if you know memory of your past births, you know why you are the way you are in this body. Is it the only way to find out? If you walked into Sri Ramakrishna's room, he would look at you, watch your gait, see your height, see your thickness, see how far apart your eyes were in the forehead, what your ears were shaped like, if your chin was jutting out, cleft, stubby, if your breast was inward, outward. By about 50 different signs, a sort of spiritual physiognomy. He'd know exactly where you'd been in your past lifetimes. Could tell you within minutes. And he'd also know what's bothering you and what you needed for this lifetime, just by looking at your features. Like you were a sort of a blueprint, like a jet airplane blueprint, you see. What's propelling this person? What karma's impeding him, you see? And then sit down and talk, you see. We'll get to the bottom of this. But it was practically unknown when he was alive. Now, 5 million people follow him in just a short, less than 200 years, see. Keshav Chandra Sen was the great leader in Bengal at the time. Nobody hears of him anymore. They all hear of Sri Ramakrishna, see. So hidden. We say Brahman is hidden, concealed, like oil in sesame seeds. So will come out at the right time, at the right moment, for the right group of people, like this small little group right here. Let me introduce you to the avatar of the age, who is the avatar of Mother Kali, who has brought the mother here for our highest good. Meet Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He's not going away. We have to unwrap him for several hundred years. And Swamiji came after that to help us do that. And her words are still there from the 1920s. I think she passed away in the 1920s, into Mahasamadhi. So you don't lose your spiritual consciousness if you have your spiritual merits, you see. Remembrance of what you did in the last lifetime. You bring that forward with you, and you don't forget it. And that's why you're a good student, or that's why you're a good meditator, or that's why you have such devotion to the Lord when others don't have any of those things. Because you worked on those and developed them in a previous lifetime. You're on your way to freedom. Salvation first, but beyond salvation is liberation. Brain first, but beyond brain is mind. You have to make these distinctions between the real and the unreal. The Vedanta Dindima, the conclusion of the Vedanta, is that. Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is unreal. And everyone goes, alas, the world is unreal. But what did I just tell you? Brahman is real. Why are you have so much woe and sorrow about the world being unreal? That's actually good news. Give it up. Like Christ did, like Buddha did, like Shankara did. Give it up and enjoy eternal life. In the body, outside the body, beyond embodiment. It's not like you have to blow your brains out with a gun or something, you see, or abandon the body right away. Just live as if you're not the body. You're not the agent of your actions. You're not the owner of the objects. It's really quite simple. And there's no sense of separation between you and God, between you and her. No separation ever existed. You constructed those separations. Now, do away with them. So don't own anything. Don't take responsibility for your acts, good or bad. Give all sense of agency away. And destroy the sense of separation between you and the divine. I and my Father are one. Use the great incarnation as an exemplar, not a savior. If you have to use him as a savior, then you're in the realm of hope and fear. See? My least favorite qualities, by the way. But if you're using him as an exemplar, you're in the realm of practice, you see. I can make myself. I will cut myself in the image of the God that I am. So I'll leave you with that message here for the break. Namaste. Welcome back to SRV San Francisco, and it's the second half of its second class in the weekend, and where the Vedanta and its teachings are bolstering us up and causing us to think very deeply. Very thought-provoking, as one person told me at the break. One new person who has probably heard this message, as many of us have, in various ways throughout life and maybe even in previous lifetimes, so it has that ring of familiarity to it. But to bring it forward and concentrate on it, make it one's pole star in life, make it the main philosophy and religion that one bases one's life and existence upon, is of course called commitment or dedication. And as happened last night, several people took initiation into the path and therefore made that commitment to living a spiritual life, a divine life, a dharmic life. All of those little bit different shades of life, but all of them also well beyond worldly life, well beyond a life of suffering, and especially suffering in ignorance. If you know why you suffer, then you've made a great step in life. But as I said, Buddha's first noble truth, there is suffering. And the second noble truth is there's a cause for it. And the third noble truth is there's a way out of it. So you can't call Buddhism a pessimistic religion just based upon hearing the first noble truth. You have to find out that he did some very deep introspection and meditation. One of his meditations lasted about 49 days or so. Now that's a long time to sit under the Bo tree. Bo is Bodhi. Bodhi means intelligence. So he named himself after that, the Buddha. So that deep introspection, looking into the nature of life and existence, both relative and absolute, or if you want to put it in that way, both the nirguna and the saguna aspects of life, all the way from the highest principle, non-duality, down to the grossest element of earth, then you become a thorough knower of Brahman. You know the unreal, you know the real, and you know that the unreal never is, and the real never ceases to be. That's how Krishna puts it in the Gita. The truth of both of those has been known by the seers. The unreal never is, it's just a phantom, and the real never ceases to be. It's always present in front of you. You're just looking at it a little bit askew sometimes, not seeing it properly, like the old adage in Vedanta of the snake and the rope. Some of you might have heard that. It's a very famous Vedantic adage that Shankara used, by the way. Raju Sarpanyaya, I think it's called in Sanskrit. And a man is walking, he sees a snake and jumps in fear. You see, it's dusk, it's getting dark. But he mistaked the rope for a snake. He looks closer and he sees his fear was unfounded. His vision was imperfect. And he based everything on that false assumption. That's a description of reading the universe in the wrong way, not seeing it as Brahman, rather seeing it as a snake or something other than what it is. If you see something as it really is, then you cease to fear it. And so knowledge, again, the greatest purifier. We're not talking about, again, strictly moral or ethical teachings where you have to do some certain practices to quit smoking or quit drinking or whatever it is that you have to do that you should have never gotten into in the first place. So that morality would be yours and you wouldn't have to go seeking it. But we're speaking about a teaching that's beyond that again, and something that is natural to life. It's dharmic life. And that dharmic life will make a god out of a man and a goddess out of a woman. It'll turn them into Shiva and Shakti, rather than just a male and female form that passes in cycles again and again with the ancestors and back. And that's precisely where we arrived after the first half in this sloka number 8. He says, in no uncertain terms, I have realized that great being who shines effulgent like the sun. And is beyond all darkness. You see, a sun doesn't experience darkness, so it's a good metaphor And it's a good principle to meditate upon. One passes beyond death only upon realizing that, and there is no other way to escape from the circle of births and deaths. So that took us to this chart where Holy Mother is telling us in various ways about the process of embodiment, because it's not there in our one lifetime scenario box that we're in Western religion, in Western psychology, in Western science, in Western conventional ways of saying. We always are thinking in terms of one lifetime. So talk about limitations of the intellect, as we were just chanting in the first half. If we can get outside that box and begin to see all of this as an effect of some cause, not just earth and water and fire, air and ether and so forth, but all our actions, all our thoughts, all our relationships, including with our ancestors and family and with friends and so forth, then we begin to have a much deeper look into the nature of things based on many lifetime scenario. And it's only then, when you know that you've been living many lifetimes, that you can, like Buddha did under the Bo tree, cut them away and say, I will just live one life now forever. I will live eternal life. That's what Christ was promising to all the apostles. The coming and going of the body is not going to mar that perfection of that realization. It's not going to change my soul. I can put on as many bodies and let them go as often as I want. So this is what she's saying here. A man is born again and again in a family, but he does so according to desire. Now, if he can attenuate desire and be born with credit merits, like in a past lifetime he meditated some, he found a teacher and learned the wisdom, he practiced devotions, did his pujas, did his worship, he yearned with a sincere longing to know God. He served other beings. Better yet, he served God in other beings. Because you may serve other beings and they take it to the ego, but if you serve God in other beings, then they tend to be God-like. That's the slight distinction. So you don't serve the egos. That's why I said you can't help anyone. God doesn't need your help. So you're not serving human beings, you're serving God in human beings. And that will give them the idea that, oh, maybe there is God in me. But if you're serving their ego, it just pads their ego, you see. I must be worth something, you see. No, you're worthless. Didn't you know that? We're all worthless. As bodies, we're worthless. And the only worthiness is that spirit, you see, that soul, that intelligence, that life, that eternal life. See, everything else just comes and goes in pallid repetition. There's a song in India that sings, to hope for help from friends and relatives provides no solution. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. Have you noticed? And not just in one lifetime, dozens. Pallid imitation, boredom, superficiality. Can't go outside your house and start talking to someone without hearing, how's the weather or how are you? You feel like saying, there is no weather, there is no me. Everything's always sunny inside of me. See? I have realized that great being who shines effulgent like the sun beyond darkness. How can you ask a person who knows that, how's the weather? There's just an eternal sun shining in that person all the time. And if there's any rain, it's the rain of grace. So try and think about that next time you think of Sri Ramakrishna or Ramana Maharshi or Dalai Lama or anyone way as far back as Sri Krishna or Sri Ramchandra. Try and think about that as their nature. Then you're going to have to think about all others who haven't realized that nature as existing under the auspice of desire. And they need to earn some credit merits. They need to do some sadhana and some practice. They began to, as we ended out the last half, cut themselves in the image. The image is graven. It's perfect. There's not a flaw in it. And you have to measure yourself up to that. You can't bring it down off the mountain and let the people dance around it, you see. You have to go up there, like Moses did, to see it face to face, to believe in it, see, to have faith in it. So, cut in the image of the Spirit. You could also say, mankind is cut in the image of God, that God is just mankind walking around on two legs, just doesn't know it yet, and isn't seeing it in others. So the first time you're going to see it is in a great soul, see, or you're going to hear about it in a great soul. That's why Swami Vivekananda sings in so many beautiful ways. Sings. Shakti samudra samuta tarangam darshita prema vidrimbita rangam samshaya rakshashana samahastram yami guru sharanam bhavavaijam yami guru sharanam bhavavaijam Naradeva Deva Jaya Jaya Naradeva Naradeva Deva Jaya Jaya Naradeva Naradeva Deva Jaya Jaya Naradeva. Naradeva, not a man, Deva God. God in mankind, Jaya, victory to that one. That's what makes you different from the animals and the insects and the plants, is that you've reached the station of human being. You've been reborn as a human being. The first great boon in life is a human body. The second is a good teacher. Because if you don't know about that divinity inside of you, you're going to turn the human body into a party, see? With drugs and drinks, carousing. And then pretty soon, the only thing you can ask the person is, how are you? How's the weather? What was your day like? How did that make you feel? Then you have to go to a person that says, how do you make you feel? You see, you're on the therapist couch, right? That's the mantra of today. How does that make you feel? I don't have feelings anymore. I'm the Buddha. I don't have sentiments and emotions. I don't need them. I've transcended the emotional level of things. My psychology is yoga. My cosmology is Sankhya. My philosophy is Vedanta. And my true nature is Advaita, non-dual. And it's an unimpeachable position. Nobody can threaten it. Not like some throne somewhere, you see, in the kingdom of Game of Thrones, you see. Nobody can threaten it. Brahman is unimpeachable. The Nirguna Brahman, I have known that, you see. I have known it. That great being who shines effulgent like the sun beyond darkness. Therefore, I put on the board the last sloka of this chapter. This is our seventh meditation chant that we're learning. I hope you know all the other six by now and have memorized them. Om Bhur-bhuvasva Tat-savitur Varenyam Yata Dipo Nivatasto Nengati Sopamashrita. That's 2. Om Shatagunam Vidyan Mananam Mananapi. That's 3. Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayan San. That's number 4. Ara Eva Ratanabhau Samhatra Natta Yadyaha. That's number 5. See, you have to know them all. So I'm giving you. And then finally, the most recent one is the sloka in the first chapter here, which I chanted in the first half. Devatma Shaktim Svagunayar Nagudam. By practicing meditation, they realized the divine energy and everything. Now here we have Veda Hametama Jaram Puranam Sarvatmanam Sarvagatam Vivutvat Janmanirodam Pravadanti Yasya Brahmavadino Hi Pravadanti Nityam. Pravadanti means, occurs twice in there, means those who declare the truth about Brahman. We go to them to hear the truth. So he says in this beautiful song I just sang, salutations, I make a complete offering to my Guru, who is a all-powerful wave of purity rising out of an infinite ocean of Shakti, who is the ultimate healer of all chronic diseases and who destroys all doubts and worldliness and attachment. That's what he's singing. Shakti Samudra Samutas Tarangam, the Shakti. See? I make a complete offering of myself to her, powerful, and to my Guru, who is a powerful wave rising out of her ocean. Because they're Pravadanti, they're telling you the truth when they come. They're not asking you how's the weather or how are you. So you know the truth and the truth will set you free. Will anything else set you free? So that one subject is the subject of the Vedanta. It's the subject of the Buddha. It's the subject of Jesus. It wasn't there for any other reason. So cut yourself in that image. Be like that. And then you too can sing like Vivekananda did. Nara Deva Deva Jaya Jaya Nara Deva. I am God come into the human flesh and I'm victorious. I think it's one way you could put it. I am God come into human flesh and I'm victorious. Whether I'm inside the body or beyond the body. So she says then here, a man is born again and again due to desire. But then there's his credit merits. If he starts working and doing his practice, he can free himself from the cycles of birth and death like the Buddha did. And then she gives you here, and I put here for you, the three bodies, in case you didn't understand that Triputi when we mentioned it yesterday and in the first half. Here's the constituents of your three bodies, basically, and what they consist of, you see. The first is the immanent world, or the physical body. Well, guess what? It's made of air, earth, fire, water, and ether, flesh, marrow, bones, fat, blood, skin, nails, and the five organs of action, speaking, handling, locomotion, excreting, and procreating. That pretty much describes the gross body and the immanent world. When you say, I want to protect the three worlds, oh Lord, may you protect the three worlds. You want us to protect us, the Lord to protect us here in the body long enough for us to realize the soul. So then we have a choice whether or not we're coming back in the body again. But we'll never come back here in ignorance, that's for sure. Then you have the transcendent world, world number 2, and it's called the subtle body and the causal body, putting them together here. Transcendent world means intellect, ego, thought, mind, audibility, tangibility, visibility, flavor, odor, smelling, tasting, seeing, feeling, hearing, inhalation, exhalation, circulatory, ascension, digestion, and distributive powers. The 5 pranas, the 5 senses, the 5 elements, and the 5-fold mind. Basically, that's all back there inside of you. Your eyes connect to the mind, don't they? When they're going outward, they connect to the elements. But when the eyes look inward, they're connecting to the mind. So that's the subtle body. You have 3 bodies, not just one. This is the way they make the healthy distinction, you see, between those levels of consciousness. Your consciousness is much more refined at the level of the subtle body because it has intelligence there, you see. It's using intelligence. It also has the one great impairment of the ego, which if it gets too thick, it veils the light, you see. So you can always keep the ego thin. You'll never be able to get rid of it. It's like an onion. Peel it and peel it and peel it, and there's no center. And it makes you cry besides. So you have to live with the ego. That means make it refined, thin it out, ripen it, hand it over to the mother. Yeah. And then you'll sing one of Sri Ramakrishna's favorite songs that he liked very much. It's one of his favorite, and this actually applies to sense of agency, sense of ownership, and sense of separation that I talked about just at the end of class. Shakale tomaricha icha mai taratumi tomaricha Oh, all happens by thy own sweet will, Mother. Everything happens by thy own sweet will. You are the self-willed one and completely independent. You cause the blind man to scale the highest mountain, yet trap the powerful elephant in the mire. On some you bestow the highest bliss, others you hurl into the world of suffering. I can only conclude that I am the house and you're the indweller. I am the sword, you're its wielder. I do as you do, I see as you see through me. That's basically the message of Raja Ramchandra, the writer of this song. Sri Ramakrishna loved that song because it spoke about non-agency. All happens by thy will, Mother. So if I follow her will, then I don't have to take responsibility for my actions. If I don't follow her will, there's karma to pay, you see. There's karma to pay. And I get it in the gross body, I get it in the subtle body, and it's there in potential form in the causal body. That's why I don't know where my suffering comes from. It's all hidden back here in the causal body. It's a very strange animal, the causal body. There's almost no information about it in the scriptures. The only thing they compare it to is your deep sleep state, where the ego goes away. So there's no more effect there, but there's some cause. See, it brings you back out of it, sends you back into it. It's indeterminable, so they equate it with that curtain of nescience, you see. The cloud of unknowing. Where does the mind go at that time? And they contrast it to meditation, going into formless state with full consciousness, as compared to going into formless state without that consciousness, in deep sleep. Samadhi, deep sleep, samadhi, deep sleep, you see. So there you have waking, dreaming, visionary state, deep sleep, and turiya, formless, you see. That's the fourth state, turiya. It's beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. If you go into it consciously, then you become a seer. Seer goes into deep sleep, comes out a seer. But a fool goes into deep sleep, comes out a fool. But if any of them go into deep sleep, beyond deep sleep to turiya, they both come out a seer. They've seen the truth, and the truth will set you free, yes. That's the whole purpose of life. If it even could be called a purpose, it really is the essence of life, is to be free. So the causal body, what's it made up of? This is all I could find. An undifferentiated state. The intellect ceases to vibrate there. There's no vibration in it, so no forms will. It shows really that the pillow is just your thought form made concretized. It's a vibration, but they think it just came from nature. But what made nature solidify it was your mind, your idea. First the inventor, then the invention. See, thought is father to the deed. We haven't put these things together yet. To trace something back to a subtle cause, what to speak of a causal cause? It's beyond us. Alochana, deep thinking. That's, as soon as you get beyond family and conventions, then you reach the ability to engage in alochana, seeing, deep thinking that causes deep seeing. And you sit around with your eyes wide open. You're never sleepy, you're never bored. You're like a hound of heaven on the trail of the divine, and you can't think of anything else but that. Even in your sleep, even in your dreamings, you can't think of anything else but that. It takes you over. What happened to my boredom? What happened to my ignorance? What happened to my depression? What happened to my problems? Gone, gone, utterly gone. My third eye is open. Now I'm just on the trail of that ultimate vision. I have to see her. I have to see her with my own eyes. He comes into flesh very seldom. I'm going to have to be there in that 50, 60, 70 years where she actually embodies. How good an aim do I have, you see, to hit the mark in history? This time is like a river. Buddha said, I got out of the river and looked at it, and then I projected a body 550 years before the Christ, you see. And then he took himself out of it again. Everyone else is rolling along as if it's a linear thing. It's not a linear thing, it's a layer cake. Time is stacked on top of time, and it's all in one eternal moment. And that eternal moment belongs to her. That's why they call her Kali. Kala means time. Kalas means phases of time. And that's a law that exists in her. So, intellect ceases to vibrate there. My time for deep thinking is over. Or, my time for deep thinking has reached fructification. All my deep thoughts are now leading me where I wanted them to. The great thinker, right? Pondering. The famous statue, right? That's alochana coming upon a human being. When world weariness begins to attend upon him, or old age attends upon him. Then he sings, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudamate Samprapte Sanihite Kali Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karine. When I was a child, when I was a baby, I was attached to my mother's breast. When I was a child, I was attached to sport. When I was a young man, I was attached to a young woman. And when I was old, I was attached to anxiety, because death is coming. But to the Supreme Brahman, alas, I was never attached. I was never attached to the reality. So I spent every minute of my time from the cradle to the grave brooding about a single breast, a couple breasts, sport, and old age. What kind of a life is that for the noble Atman to live? Brooding is the worst waste of time. The curtain of nescience is thickened by brooding. This curtain of nescience consists of ignorance of your true nature, doubt, and fear. Those are the three elements in the curtain of nescience, which are precisely there in the causal body. Your whole life is coming out of a state of fear. You have fear to get in the body, fear to leave the body. Fear while you're in the body, isn't it? That primal root fear that's behind everything. And the doubt that attends it, you see. So you brood on those, and this curtain gets thick, and pretty soon you can't see your way. You're like in a dark room, bumping into things, and you don't know where to go. The great exemplars come and say, there's the way, and you don't listen. I think I'll just stay lost. So quit brooding about these things. Thin the curtain of nescience, because you have to see through that. You're going to have to penetrate through this line of demarcation in order to get free. And you want to do that before you die, ideally. You don't want to leave it to chance. Now, if you have your credit merits from meditation, and you begin to gain a little bit of mastery over death, like one song sings, I have received a command from the Mother of the Universe that death must die. Then I'm going to put death in its own grave, you see. So I'm doing that as I practice, because as I practice, the principles I'm studying as I meditate and read are all about deathlessness, eternity, consciousness, the soul. These are all things that never die. And lo and behold, I find out along the way that nature never dies either. That my children never die. That when my baby comes out of the womb, it comes out of a causal state. And when he lives, he's living in a subtle and physical state. And when he turns old and passes out of the body, he just goes back to the causal state. There's no death. There's just dream transition. Now I'm here, now I'm there, now I wake up here, now I go to sleep there, now I'm born here, now I'm dead, now I'm reborn here. That's all it is. It's just shifting your consciousness around layers. Layers of your own mind. Layers of the great mind. And you're looking for some source in it. That's called seeking. So seek thee first. All of that would be added unto you. But don't seek this or her, and you're lost here. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? They're living in pallid imitation of everyone else. That is, if my father believes he's dying, then I'm going to believe I'm dying when it's my turn. When never the case. Never the such was the case. I never die. And if this eye opens, I'll know that. 7 different religions talk about this eye. I found it in 7 different religions. I have a chart on it. Not just Hindu religion. Not just a poster you see on the wall with Mother Kali and she's got a third eye. What's that mean? What kind of esoteric meaning is there? That you find it in 6 other different religious traditions of the world. Whether you call it Jnana Chakshu, the wisdom eye, or the white dove ascending, as the Gnostics called it, that Christ visited, or if you call it the white sun, as the Taoists call it, you look everywhere. See, if thine eye be single eye, as Christ called it, if that opens, then you realize the eternity of all things. The non-origination of all things. Nothing has a beginning. It doesn't have an end either. It's all continual cycles. And that's the penultimate realization. And once you see it's all eternal cycles, you're going to go, gee, I don't know if I want to stay on the merry-go-round. Now that I know that. That's what happened to Buddha. I don't know if I want to stay in those cycles. See, first you hear that word, everything's interconnected. But everything that is interconnected in the New Age philosophy as compared to everything is interconnected in the Buddhist philosophy are 2 different things. In the New Age philosophy, you say, oh, great, we're one with nature. In the Buddhist philosophy, it says, I am not one with nature. Nature is in me. Nature has come out of me. I'm not air, earth, fire, water, and ether. I'm not the body, or its fat, bone, flesh, skin, and excreta, I hope. I'm not the mind with its thoughts, its ego, its intelligence, and neither am I going to be the causal body. Just a state of non-vibration. I am the Atman, supreme. I am the eternal soul. I am all-pervasive. I am birthless and deathless. Time and space exists in me, not the other way around. What else is there in the causal body? Mind exists, but it's in a subtle state. The gunas are set in equilibrium. So you're beginning to assimilate the nirguna state, but you haven't arrived at it yet. It's like the condition of deep sleep. That's probably the easiest thing we can relate to the causal body. It's like deep sleep. Try and remember what it was like to be in deep sleep last night. And then you'll get an idea of what the causal body is. You see, formless. But it's formless with a curtain of nescience over it. Formless / curtain of nescience, you see. It's not a state that transforms you because people go into it every night and they still come out the same old person. You can dream for 8 hours and run your wheels ragged, you see. You can deep sleep for 20 minutes and be completely refreshed for 24 hours. So there's a certain reflection in it. So I must have been very close to the light of Brahman when I went into deep sleep, but I could not see the light of Brahman because my third eye was not open. I was too sleepy. I couldn't stay awake. But the illumined soul has the insomnia of yoga. He rests in a sleepless state, even when his body rests. My teacher was like that. He slept, but his mind never slept. His mind was ever awake. So your dreams do get lucid. And your deep sleep state becomes filled with light, and you pierce through the curtain of nescience, and your third eye opens and you see. Also, this pre-exists the physical worlds. Now there's a great key for your cosmology. It pre-exists the physical world. So this body comes out of this body, and this body comes out of this body. Your physical source of that is your mind. Your mind source is the causal state. And they march out that way. And the only words we have in English for it is evolution and involution, but science is pretty much postulating that as physical only. Physical marches out, then the physical marches in. It has nothing to do with the soul. That's in charge of the physical. And in fact, beyond the causal body is your Atman, your true being, and it's watching this process go on all the time, just like Buddha outside of the river of time. It's the witness. Sakshi Bhutam, it's the witness. It sees all phenomena flow by, and it knows all phenomena are unreal. A matter of momentary significance, if any. See, rising and falling like waves on an ocean. And it stands back as witness of the other three states. It is Turiya, and it stands back as the witness of deep sleep, visions, dreaming, and waking. Sakshi Bhutam, the witness of all phenomena. So this point here is very precious. What pre-exists the physical worlds? Your consciousness in another state. It pre-exists them. So anterior to life and mind is the Atman. You know what the word anterior means? It means before. Before life and mind came into existence, your Atman was there watching the process. In other words, we know there's such a thing as rebirth because someone witnessed it. We know that the void is not the ultimate state because somebody came back from the void and gave it a name. There's a witness always to everything. My teacher used to say, you can go on denying the existence of everything. Neti, 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 not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. Finally, you've negated everything. Back to a state of emptiness, like deep sleep. But then you say to yourself, wait a minute, there's been someone all along who's doing the negating. And then you turn and look at your own original face. And you see that not only you are the one that's doing negating, that all of that you negated is in you. And that you projected it. And now you're withdrawing it. All of a sudden you change your name for death to withdrawal. You don't believe in death anymore. And you don't believe in evolution and involution. You just believe in one state of mind, ever free, never bound, with yogic insomnia and everywhere, in everything, like sunlight in dewdrops. The light is everywhere, but it's not a dewdrop. It's not the thing it reflects in. It's its own independent light. And that light you're getting a bath in deep sleep. That's why you feel so damn good, see, after deep sleep. The afternoon nap, for instance. You skip dreaming, go straight into an hour, and all of a sudden the kids break into the room and you're wide awake. You went from waking state to deep sleep, back to waking state. You skipped all the dreams. So that bath that you took is a refection. But what you want to do is get up in the morning after you went into deep sleep and sit and say, now, where did I go in deep sleep? Who was I? Who am I? And trace yourself back to that formless state with your eye open. With both eyes open. All three of them. Be the three-eyed Gauri. See, the three-eyed Gauri we were worshipping last night in puja. Be the three-eyed mother. She sees all, on all levels of existence. She's with form, she's beyond form, and she's beyond both form and formlessness as the witness. The final bullet point here is It is the cause of the gross and subtle bodies. So cause and effect is traced back to your causal body. Embodiment then is now an open book to you. If you understand this chart and what Holy Mother has said, it should be an open book to you. She says about the gross body, people with desires take their lives again and again. Afterwards they go to other planes of experience and they experience pleasure and pain, and in course of time are born again in human form. So that's your basic old rebirth. See, cycles of birth and death and ignorance. Buddha called it samsara, as opposed to nirvana, freedom from birth and death. Now she says about your subtle and causal body, all people, excepting highly advanced souls, live in a spirit body for a year after death. The spirit body can be likened to a body made of air, which is of course a metaphoric reference. So it's as if, I remember Vivekananda saying once, the ancestors are right here on this same plane with you, just in a different dimension. They're standing right next to you. You know, the Central American Indians and people like that, they have that idea of the ancestors, you know, being right here. It's like, gosh, get away from me. You know. They're pressing right up against you, inhabiting the same space, which is a little bit of dimensional difference. So you can't quite see them, see, with these eyes, hear them with these ears. But if you develop subtle eyes and subtle ears, all of a sudden you hear those voices, you see those visions. About the Atman, your true being, she says, only those who belong to a high spiritual category can be renunciates and gain liberation from all kinds of fetters. I bless you so that you may attain liberation in this life, Jivan Mukta. Birth and death are extremely painful. May you not suffer them anymore. Is she a life negator? She doesn't want you to come back in the body in ignorance anymore. Her children came back in knowledge, and she loved them, you see. She loves all children, even those who are suffering, maybe especially those who are suffering. But she doesn't want you to come back here again in ignorance ever again. Too much suffering involved. Too much of a karmic debt weighing on you. No way to live, as we were saying. So make sure you get free of ignorance and then take as many births as you want or not. Those who take births in wisdom are called bodhisattvas or jivan muktas. Those who get their freedom in that particular lifetime and never come back again are called videha muktis, free from all bodies. They'll never show up in a form again. They're just going to merge like a hailstone in an ocean and be perfectly happy there. Like you are in deep sleep, perfectly happy, till the kids burst into the room and wake you up. Understanding our three bodies, very, very precious teaching in the Dharma. Sri Ramakrishna says at the end of this chart, following the Maya of knowledge, step by step one attains knowledge of Brahman. This Maya of knowledge can be likened to the last few steps of a stairway. Next is the roof. So some, after reaching the roof, go up and down the stairs, which is to say they keep the ego of knowledge for helping others, for tasting divine bliss, and for sporting with the devotees. Very nice description by Sri Ramakrishna of a person who is fully enlightened but who maintains a body. For helping others, for tasting divine bliss, and for sporting with the devotees. See, just like Christ with his 12 apostles, and Buddha with his Noble Eight, and Ramakrishna with his 16 direct disciples, they sported with them. Then they all gave up the form. They're all gone now. Ramakrishna said they're like a band of musicians that blows into town. Avatar and his disciples blow into town, play the most beautiful music anyone's ever heard, and everyone who happens to be there when they set up and played goes running to the rest of town saying, you've got to come hear this band play. They all come running, but they've already packed up and gone to the next town. So only those whose karma was set to encounter those beings, who had merits from their previous births, are there. Otherwise the steamship has already left port and all you have is a few big waves. which is our case right now, some almost 200 years after Ramakrishna has passed. 1886, is it? 1986, 150 years or so, not even. So he used to say himself, for at least 200 or 300 years after my death, I will be here in my subtle body with you, keeping the curtain of Maya held up so that souls can get through to Brahman. But Atlas shrugged. Curtain of heaven, Maya is too heavy for any soul to keep up very long. It's going to come falling down again. Look what happened to the religions. A new religion has to come, a new dispensation, a new presenter every 500 or 600 years. And the curtain of Maya falls so heavily, then you can't even recognize Christianity now for what it was when Christ was walking the earth. Because there was no Christianity when Christ was walking the earth. He's it. Tag, cosmic tag, he's it. He's the one. What we say in Hawaii, you the one. You the one. It's pidgin, folks. So in that sloka 8, we unwrapped it due to its mention of the circle of births and deaths. Sloka 9 says, there is nothing higher than or different from that reality, nothing greater or more minute than it. It is rooted in its own glory. It stands like a tree, one without a second, immovable, and by that being the whole universe is filled, like dewdrops filled with sunlight. That being is far beyond this world, is formless and free from misery. Those who know this become immortal, but all others have indeed to suffer misery alone. Here at the Healing Center, we see a lot of that. You see. Many people come just suffering misery without any knowledge of this superlative being inside of them. That's Sloka 10. Sloka 11 is, therefore that divine Lord, being all-pervading, omnipresent and benevolent, dwells in the hearts of all beings and makes use of all faces, heads, and necks in this world. 12. This self is indeed the mighty Lord. It is imperishable, eternal light that controls everything. It guides the intellect of all beings so as to enable them to gain the extremely pure state of mukti, or moksha, or kaivalya, or satori, or nirvikalpa, or sampragyata. So many words for that state of freedom in the different religious traditions. Freedom, what is it? It's not freedom which is produced or generated. It's not freedom that is a result of evolution, development, or transformation. It's not freedom that is something that gets attained, like a post-mortem emancipation. And it's not something to be realized via purification. Freedom is here and now. None of those things can get freedom for you. And if you start off knowing that about freedom, called moksha, then your whole life will be blessed. You'll not be seeking anything. You'll know that you already have that freedom inside of you, and you will be free, and you will live free. I'm sorry, born free is a little bit of a misnomer. No one's born free. Always have the fetters of this body, even the avatar. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, from avatar to the ant, anything in a form suffers. So you're going to have to take on suffering. The difference is some suffer in ignorance and some suffer in knowledge. Those who are suffering in knowledge know their suffering is not based on not having things of the world. Their suffering is based on losing the formless reality. They want to go back to it. Sort of like a young boy misses his mother. Nothing, candy, play, sport, uncles, will ever help that soul. He's just saying, crying, mother, mother, mother. He wants only mother. Like that, the soul wants nothing but God, the soul in knowledge. So he's biding his time here in this realm. See, forbearing all ills, and trying to get into samadhi and coming out of samadhi and into samadhi and out of samadhi, and teaching students, sporting with the devotees, drinking bliss, and helping others, as we just said. That's his whole preoccupation. It's called lila, divine sport. But behind that sport is this strong desire to merge again in Brahman. That's why they go into samadhi so much. They almost can't help it, you see. Ramakrishna would come out of samadhi. He'd look around. He'd see all his best disciples, his wife. "Who are you again?" he'd say. "Who are you? What's your names?" He was so far gone from name and form and ego that it took him a while to reorient to the body again. He had gone far beyond, as Buddha said, to the supreme goal, beyond the farthest shore, and he would come back into the body. Very rare thing to be able to do. And then he couldn't even recognize his own wife. So they'd give him a glass of water, because they wanted to hear him talk. Give him a glass of water, and he'd stick his finger in it and go, "Ah yes, the realm of the five elements. Now I know where I am." He had to orient himself. And traces of samadhi would stay with him for days. So he'd be kind of drunken and blissful. See. Buddha was the same way. Couldn't speak for days. They thought he would never give the secret of nirvana. But out of compassion, he finally found his tongue, started speaking. And there's been no religious phenomena like Buddhism, ever. It spread across the world without raising a finger, what to speak of raising a sword. Totally nonviolent. It went everywhere. In a matter of decades and centuries, it had reached Ceylon, Burma, China, Tibet, finally Japan as Zen. It's the most amazing religious phenomenon we've ever seen, and it did it completely nonviolently. Its insistence was, give up animal sacrifice. Its insistence was ahimsa, nonviolence. It convinced great Indian kings to give up violence, stop warring. So, right out of Mother India came the Buddha, 550 years before Christ. We should look at that, meditate on that. So, a mention of how one gets into the extreme state of moksha. You can say it's not a freedom that's produced or generated. That's not moksha. That's not liberation. It's not a freedom that you can attain. That's not moksha. It's not a freedom that comes about by evolution or by transformation of mind. That's not moksha. And it's not something to be realized via purification. Freedom is already here, at hand, always and ever. And that's your true nature. So if you think of it in any of those other ways, it's second best, at best. You have to see it in its original state. Moksha, freedom, is a state already at hand. How did he say it? Our great Shankara, whom we're honoring this month. Mukti or moksha is not to be considered a state or experience yet to come. It is the eternal condition of the soul, which is nothing other than Brahman. Sparse words, straight to the point. No wastage, no verbiage, no commentary. It's not a state to come. It's here upon us. It's the nature of your soul is freedom. Vedic koans for you to think about, you see. That's good for one meditation, isn't it? Sit there for an hour thinking about that. Gee, I've been thinking bondage and freedom all this time. I never thought that freedom is and bondage is not. So I've been putting energy into bondage. Christ told me to resist not evil, yet I've here personified an incarnate devil. And I'm resisting it with war against the infidels. They're evil, I'm not. But you're not supposed to resist it, because if you resist it, it gains ground in you. See? You sidestep it, you transcend it. The wind tries to blow through a wall. If it can't, it'll go to the left. Can't find the end of the wall, go to the right. Finally, it blows over it, or through a chink in it. It finds a way. So you have to find a way out of Maya, a way out of mundane human convention, a way out of fundamentalist religious leanings. Because freedom lies there, not in pallid imitation of everyone else. That was sloka number 12. Sloka 13 is, assuming a form of the size of a thumb by virtue of intellect, emotion, imagination, and will, the infinite being dwells in the hearts of creatures as their inner self. Those who realize this become immortal. All of the last 4 or 5 slokas have had that ending to them. Those who realize that become immortal. Those who realize that become immortal. Those who meditate on Brahman become Brahman. It's not so far away from your capacity to realize that. In fact, Shankara himself said, have samadhi. Or if you can't have samadhi, practice having samadhi. Assume the position, which is meditation. Samadhi will come to you. Meditation is the 7th limb of yoga. Samadhi is the 8th. How many people can get beyond meditation into samadhi? See? Get to the Father through the Son, see, and have that non-dual experience. He's saying, go ahead, practice it. Try it. Storm the gates of relative existence. Put Maya on its ear. Be the self. Be the divine self that you are. That infinite being has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet, enveloping the whole universe on all sides. It exists everywhere. The only thing I could think of as a chart was to borrow one of these images from the collection of Ramanand, and show you this many-headed, many-armed, many-mouthed, many-legged being, which, by the way, correlates with the personal God, right? On down. It doesn't correlate here, because in the 7th sloka we said, beyond the personal God is the Supreme Lord, formless. So God with form at the cosmic level, that cosmic level which is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, that we saw in the last chart, is the personal God. It's the highest form of God the human mind can conceive of. But then when the mind becomes pure mind, or when it becomes Buddha mind, or when it becomes no mind, or pure mind, then it doesn't see concepts and forms anymore. Its tendency is to merge in them, to merge in the infinite. So that's why Sloka 14 says, that infinite being has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet, enveloping everything, the whole universe on all sides. The same Upanishad says in the quote here, though the Lord, the cosmic projector of heaven and earth realms, is one and indivisible, yet he is the real owner of all eyes, all faces, all hands and feet in the gradated universes. It is he who inspires them all to do their respective duties in accordance with knowledge of the past actions and tendencies of various beings. He's the Falaharini Kali Devi. He's paying off all karmas. Karma is the God of the universe. Cause and effect. And it exists at gross, subtle, and causal levels that you have to trace. Look at some of those beings there. Prajapati is the teacher of the gods. He's actually a human being, and he teaches the gods. Because the gods are fixed in a position, they can't get enlightenment. They're assigned to a certain position for hundreds and thousands of years. But man can go up and down the amber stairs of birth and death. That's the advantage. Embodiment has only a negative connotation? No. And he's free. He can go up and down the amber stairs of birth and death and take as many bodies in as many different places as he wants. Like Markandeya in the Upanishads. Go up the cosmic body to Virat and get right here, you see, and he's hanging out. All of a sudden he falls out of the eye of God. and into the ocean of black waters, swimming around. Then he falls back in. That was a strange experience. So he fell out of the highest reckoning of God the human mind could possibly comprehend and into the formless reality, and then fell back in. See, and when he fell back in, he forgot the ocean of formlessness. And he was a great, Markandeya was a great illumined soul who could go up and down all the kingdoms of heaven, anywhere he wanted, like Narada. So when he had that non-dual experience, he was pondering it. See, what happened to me there in formlessness? Prajapati was a great teacher of men. Then Ganesha, you see the elephant-headed god. He's part of the pantheon. Chandra, the moon. Surya, the sun. There's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva in the middle, that we saw in the last chart, and that we see over here too. The Trinity, it's called. All connected into the all-pervasive Brahman, which is in the heart. There you see Indra, Agni, Vayu, and Varuna, the god of gods, the god of fire, the god of wind, the god of water, and the god of earth, all there. You see Hanuman, the monkey god, Lord Ram's great devotee. There's the Sapta Rishis, the 7 Sapta Rishis that preside over each of the 7 realms of existence, helping beings who go there. About them, they sing. In one particular verse. Sapta Rishi Mandalike Jnana Yogi Rishi Var Sapta Rishi Mandalike Jnana Yogi Rishi Var Brahma Sukha Choda Kala Svayam Hiyaite Brahma Sukha Choda Kala Svayam Hiyaite Shri Rama Krishna Ekadin Jnana Mogana Huite Jnana Meve Pehchani Narendra Konate. Beautiful song written in this decade about the Sapta Rishis and about Ramakrishna and Niran, Vivekananda. Later his monastic name was Vivekananda. His pre-monastic name was Narendra, Narendranath, Lord of Men. This is pre-monastic name given to him by his parents. So Sapta Rishi Mandalike, the mandala of rishis, you see, that preside over all the worlds. They're the highest of all beings in each of the 7 realms that correlate with the 7 chakras, by the way. Our salutations to the Swamis of the Ramakrishna order who write songs such as these in this day and time. Not everything is ancient. Everything is eternal, but it doesn't have to be ancient to be sacred. There are many beautiful things happening in the contemporary times that are of divine nature. Well, there's Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield, you see below. They enact that same battle over and over again. You don't know that by reading the Gita. You think, oh, this is it, you see. But if you read the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam or other scriptures, you find out that Krishna and Arjuna come every age. Thousands of times they've enacted the same battle for people who have an opportunity to get up and out of birth and ignorance. And the Gita is there all the time. It's an eternal scripture. Krishna brings it back again, back again. It's an eternal scripture. We call our scriptures eternal. They're not marked by time. So there they are on the battlefield, and there's the word Ishvara, which is God in human form. And here is the sloka which I just read. I don't need to read it again. Hands and feet everywhere, ears, arms, mouths everywhere. It exists, pervading everything. That's the personal Brahman. So if you think the personal Brahman is that wide and variegated, how about the impersonal Brahman? Like sunlight and dewdrops. It's even more all-pervasive. And it's not impeded by forms. like the personal God is. That's why sometimes people have a problem with the personal God. They think, I want to go beyond the personal. See? I'm Jewish. I'm Muslim. I'm Advaitic. I want to go beyond the form, God with form. I want to see, my prophets are fine, but I want to see Allah face to face. I want to merge with Yahweh. I want to go into the Absolute. In 2 days, my friends, we've done 14 slokas with about 8 or 10 charts. That's how I unwrap slokas for you in this day and age, by these visuals. Think how bored you would be if you just sit here and hear me for 3 hours. But I actually break that up with visuals, so it helps you. So you have hearing and seeing, right? The power to hear and the power to see, all connected back into the mind connected into the intellect, and the intellect connected into the great self. Connect them all, and live a divine life in that connection. In my next meeting here in the summer, we'll go through more of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Mark in your books, please, those of you who are using them, the text, that we are on 314. And we use these charts, this chart particularly, for that sloka. There are 21 slokas in this chapter, so the other 6 or 7 we should have no problem in doing on my next visit. So thank you for your kind attention and for your deep attentions. Let's end here with a chant. Om Bhadram, Om Bhadram, Karnebhihi Sriniyama Devaha, Bhadram Pasyema Akshabir Yajatraha, Stirairangaish Tushtuvam Sastanuvir, Vyashema Devahitam Yadaya. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshiping the Lord and Mother of the universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.